Okay, the Hangouts is now live. I'm just going to go back to the YouTube page and make sure that I just pause it now. All right. Hey guys, welcome to my 7:30 p.m. Wednesday night live stream. Today my guest is Christopher Shortis, law student and many other things at large. I just don't know what. Patriot and left, hated by the left, known as Beetroot and a series of other things.
Yes,
Thank you for coming.
Forget the sunscreen, yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming back on my channel. I really appreciate it. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very
Great.
well indeed, yeah.
Good, as well you should be. We should all be great.
Yes, yes, implementing my plans, so yes.
Well, that's good. Well, today's subject is probably one that no one would specifically expect, I think, from me, because it's not something I really talk about, but I'm actually happy to do the subject,
Yeah.
and that is the Australian Constitution, because I am of the belief, and I think you and I share the same opinion on this, that general Australian citizens at large are a little bit too complacent and apathetic, and we should have knowledge, and knowledge is power, and part of that is knowing what our constitution says, and many of us don't. Would you agree with that?
I do agree, but I agree more on a specific nature of not only the constitution, but particularly the system of governance that we have and the potential power that we could have if we were to become more collective in our attitudes. Because briefly speaking, the government or governance of Australia is divided into three aspects, and that is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Now, the judiciary must be separate from government. Sometimes the executive and the legislature overlap because you're talking about the whole amount of parliamentarians in our parliamentary system in the House of Representatives and the Senate. So there's a bit of overlap there because sometimes the government, for example, can make a law in the lower house, which is the House of Representatives, and they get a majority vote there, but it may not pass the Senate if the government doesn't have a majority there. And few governments in history since Federation have actually controlled both houses. And if they have, they've only been there one term.
Okay. So how do you describe the classic system in other countries, say in Europe or in America? How would you say the Australian system differs to the United States or to whatever it may be? Because obviously Australia is a Commonwealth country, so it's similar to the British system. But just for the sake of it, let's say America versus Australia, how would you describe the two?
Look, both inherit.
Because it's all British.
They both inherit the common law attitude, right?
Yes.
The common law rights, because common law is based upon an adversarial system, which the defendant or the accused, if they are to be charged with any crime, must be charged with a crime, but they must have the presumption of innocence. It's not.
Sure.
It's not like France and the more inquisitor type legal systems. We actually have an adversarial system based upon our common law heritage, which came from Magna Carta. However, what the United States did was completely separate and divide the powers between the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary.
Which we should have done.
Look,
it's just their system is it's flawed, but it's so much better than the rest of the British Foundation countries. If you think of Canada, the UK itself, or South Africa.
I would disagree at large. The thing that stands out for me about the United States is that they've got a lot stronger emphasis as a nation that you may have majority rule in the context of elections. But majority rule, you've got to remember, America's technically not a democracy, it's a republic. So mob rule does not trump individual rights.
Oh, well, that's a good thing.
Right? That's their Bill of Rights, yeah?
Yeah, the Bill of Rights.
Yeah. But you do see the contradictions. Sort of
every man is created equal.
Well, yes, but you have your contradictions in that. But
sure.
But every country has those contradictions, including ours.
But Australia does not have a Bill of Rights. They do. It's a great caveat.
But believe it or not, Victoria has a Charter of Human Rights.
And a charter, is that similar? Does that act in a similar way than a Bill of Rights?
Yes, it does. Section 15 and Section 16, right?
Okay.
Although it has its limitations, right? Section 15, you have the right to freedom of expression, right? Section 16,
so sorry, you've brought something up that I obviously really wanted to unpack. So now that you've already mentioned it, that Victorian, so that you're talking specifically about Victoria's freedom of expression, correct?
That's correct. It's Victorian legislation.
Okay, so with that particular expression, what does that fall under? Does that fall under religion? Does that fall under political opinions? What does that fall under?
It falls under
all of the above.
All the above, but the limitations obviously are subjected to laws, because whether you have the Human Rights Charter and Responsibilities Act 2006 in Victoria, our nation is still having to deal with the issue of freedom of expression at large, because courts and tribunals are increasingly intervening, because I think as a nation we don't know anymore what freedom of expression is, because it depends on your political perspective. You know, one person may call one thing freedom of speech or freedom of expression, then another person will say that's discrimination, right? And unfortunately, me included, there's been quite a few cases over the last 10, 15 years where the courts and tribunals are actually intervening.
Okay, well, my issue with the Australian system at large, particularly here in Victoria, and I think you could agree that Victoria is becoming very much like V for Vendetta. It's like a police state, and it's at its inception at the moment. I think I could be wrong. Maybe it's been that way for the last 10 years, and I didn't know. I don't know, but the point of what I'm saying is that if I said something right now, or I was on national television and I said something about the religion of peace, or I chose to, let's say, chop the head off a mannequin, and see what would happen, I don't have the freedom of expression to do that. So that charter is actually not effective, because the government can at any time decide to be offended on behalf of Muslims, and
You're preaching to the choir, my darling.
I know. So how do you explain it from the perspective of a lawyer, or from the perspective of the law or the government? How do they think they can do that? Please explain. According to what you think, your analysis.
Because majority of people don't have the knowledge to contest it, and unfortunately, even with the so-called Human Rights Charter, right, of Victoria, and even speaking on behalf of the United States, there are people that have, been brought before courts because someone said, well, what you're not is, saying is freedom of expression. It's hate speech, or in this country, what happened to us, or specifically my charge was, remember the exact charge that I was convicted under was in participation of a video with the intention to incite serious contempt, ridicule, and revulsion for a class of persons.
What is it with me and all these convicted criminals? And I'm really kidding. Just keep going. I'm sorry, that was just a bad joke against myself.
Yeah, I know, it's a bad joke. Yeah, I know. But everyone's a comedian. And but the bottom line is, Claudia, is the fact is, we are in no man's land, because law can be debated. Just like Parliament, it's
not concrete. It's not like 1 + 1 is 2.
Exactly. You got one person arguing the fact that in the context of freedom of expression, that it was freedom of expression, and then got the other saying, no, what you did was incitement or ridicule, or whatever you want to call it, right? We're in that no man's land, and I think the reason why governments have been able to bring these laws in is because Australia has, in its population at large, has forgotten what its own rights are, or couldn't have been bothered exercising them, because we've had life too good after the wars. We're affluent. We're in a land of plenty, and unfortunately, my personal opinion is apathy is really taking place now. I'm I'm finding out a lot of things about, the way the system works.
Mm.
And when I look back, to the way people express themselves on the street and the way people talk about, but I've got a right to freedom of speech, it's really based upon ignorance and a lack of knowledge. It really is.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not trying to be.
No, you're right. I was just about to say something similar, and I didn't want to get in trouble for saying it. But what I was just about to say was, because I'm a first-generation Australian, I'm a beneficiary of everything that's come after, like, the 1970s, where, like, the influx of my people and others that weren't wanted came in. I can acknowledge that. But at the same time, I've adopted the Australian culture, and part of that is apathy and complacency. We're so laid back. So it doesn't surprise me that the native citizens or the citizens at large are ignorant. And I didn't want to say that, but you said it first, so made it okay for me to corroborate. We are lazy and not stupid, but like we lack information because we don't seek it out. We're not told, and that's exactly what our Marxist government is doing. They're trying to keep their population stupid or complacent, whatever wording you want to use, so that they can keep propagating their horrible agenda, like swing it, like, I don't know, whatever it may be, safe schools and alternative partners and alternative lifestyles, things that erode the cohesiveness of the Christian heritage.
Yeah, look,
it's all connected, all of it.
I agree, but
I know you do.
I agree. Unfortunately, what's driving me to do what I do is I have this burning desire of duty for my country, and I know that I have to get educated to have any hope of any impact, because, like,
this is my desire.
Well, my desire is already there.
Yeah, I know.
It was long ago, but I mean, if you want to use a biblical metaphor, Hosea chapter 4 verse 6 says, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge, for they have rejected knowledge, and I also reject thee. And thou should be no priest unto me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget your children."
And give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and give unto God what is God's.
Yeah. I mean, look, we have to exercise our knowledge as best we can and get into the system. You've got to remember the so-called, and I want to be careful in my words, I'm using quotation marks, the Marxist agenda, right?
Sure.
Okay, there are those that are on, what people would say on my side of the camp. The institutions are overrun by a Marxist agenda.
Yeah.
Now, to correlate with the fact that people have become affluent and become, I don't want to use the word lazy, but just basically, we've had a good life in Australia for, the last, 50 years, and it's just the last 10 years where we've seen this really full-on trend. You've got to remember those who had the socialist mindset, starting from, say, the hippies or even earlier, they've been devoted to their cause more than what the average Australian has, who just, wants to raise a family, go to work, pay off a house, have a car, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Those who wanted to destroy this nation have used the system, and we have to understand that they're more committed to their cause than the average Australian is committed to say, what about our freedom of speech? What happened to the Australia of old?
It's gone.
I have to accept that, because even as a nationalist, the mother of all paradoxes that I face is that when I look at Australia, right, who is really responsible for the way this country is today?
You.
I mean, I can't blame the Chinese. I can't blame even the Africans now.
Or the Colombians.
Colombians like you, these shitty bloody Colombians, right? I've got to blame those, right, of my own ilk, of my own kind, who have taken
your fellow white man.
Exactly. And that's the paradox, you see. But I've got to deal with the system now, and that system is now, we still inherently got our system legally, okay? And Australians, ordinary Australians, particularly those of my ilk, right, have got to come to realise that we're immersed in political struggle. And the only way to actually have any hope of reversing these things is that more individuals like myself have got to take up the mantle and go, what do you want to do? Do you want to serve your nation in the form of public life, right? Now, for example, practicing law or politics, most people would view those things as not noble anymore. They're not a noble occupation anymore.
No, because people are stupid and it's not patriotic to do so. And
No. I'm not going to use the word stupid. It's just that what's happened is
people are.
Well, I don't want to be that mean. People have become.
Am I mean?
Well, look, I'm trying to be constructive.
Right?
Okay. I'm trying to be constructive.
Go ahead. That's
because
all right.
Politicians now only are in power to get to the next electoral cycle. Right.
Sure. Sorry. Just to clarify, I think we're all stupid. Sometimes even I say stupid things. But anyway, keep going.
I understand that, but I mean, if you really want to have an impact and have an influence, people have got to go, you know what? I've got to subject myself to duty for this nation.
I agree.
It's the world that I want to leave behind. Now, I wish to contribute in some form to public life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And things like practicing law, and because the ideal of practicing law, the profession, idealistically, is very noble.
Yes.
Now, unfortunately, in Victoria, as a very good result, a very good example, we've got Lawyer X. Right?
What does that mean?
The controversy surrounding the police spending $4.5 million to suppress the identity of this lawyer. I've forgotten her name, but Lawyer X is the lawyer who represented the Tony Mockbells and the Carl, whatever his name is, who was killed in jail. And she was an police informant at the same time.
Oh, I think I've heard of this.
That's right. Lawyer X. If you look up Lawyer X in Google,
it'll all come up.
Because now her identity has been revealed.
Oh.
After.
I know what that's like. I've been doxxed myself.
But look, the lawyer, right, or barrister in this case, had a sacred duty of lawyer-client privilege.
Nicola Gobbo.
And the fact that being an informant to the police while serving to be a barrister to the Tony Mockbells and the figures that we know about in the underbelly, right? Whether people like Tony Mockbell or not is not the issue. The issue is there's been a gross miscarriage of justice. And ultimately what's going to come out of this is I would allege criminal conduct by the police.
Okay.
Because the sacred tenet of law is that you have the right to a fair trial, regardless of your crimes.
Sure.
Okay. That has been blown out of the water. And because of police, I will allege police misconduct by having a deliberate informant who was acting as a barrister to Tony Mockbell, right? And it's put the whole legal fraternity and the Victoria Police and high rankings into disrepute.
Well, I would add to that to say that you can't really trust the system, the judicial system at large anyway. Not anymore.
No. This is the mistake that people make.
Okay.
Right? There is a complete difference. The structures of our institution or our system, if you will, are fine.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Of course, they can be improved, and that's the workings of democracy. Okay. Right. What I'm trying to say is there's a difference between a corrupt system than those who use the system corruptly.
Okay, I can get on board with that. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, right? Because they use the system to advantage themselves rather than to the service of the public.
Okay, I just saw a question in the comments that I wanted to read out to you that I thought was a good one. He says, wasn't our constitution being changed without referendum in 1974, which in turn makes our current constitution and government illegal? What do you have a response to that, or do you know about that?
Oh, it's to do with there's a couple of instances actually. You know, some would argue that even that happened under the Australia Act. It's to do with the coat of arms and that sort of thing. Our current constitution basically says the same thing as the constitution prior to 1974, right? Now, to be quite frank with you, I have not delved into that specific nature of that question.
So we won't delve into it. That's fine.
I can't answer that.
Sure.
To be fair to the person who asked the question, I can't answer that. I have
Michael.
heard of that.
It was Michael. Yeah.
To Michael. Thank you, Michael, for that question.
Mm.
It's something that I'm certainly willing to research and look into. But, you know, as you can see, being a law student, I'm swamped in studies and that sort of thing. And I'm sure that I'm going to address that question in my own personal journey in the future. But I cannot answer the specifics of that. I'm not shutting down his question.
No, I think he's fine. He's actually my first follower, one of my very first followers, and he's still following me now. So I actually really love that guy. But no, he'll be fine with you. He probably would want. Yeah, no, I'll have you back on in a month or two, and then maybe he'll appreciate the response. But just to go back to what you said earlier, you said that you blame your ilk, meaning your own people, white people, for the current state of the country as it is today. Yes. But I think it would be a little bit more accurate to say those with a Marxist agenda who happen to be white, because obviously there are many white people who want Australia to remain. My EP's just come out. Hang on. Obviously, there are many white people who are not doing that. So I'm just saying that it's more of the leftist people with that agenda. The people who are centrists and the people who are on the right somewhat wouldn't be doing that. But the unfortunate, it's like half the country is doing what you're saying and the other half isn't.
But go back to what I'm saying though, right?
Sure.
Is that those of the left, right? Because the perception of the right is that how is it these Marxists, and I'm using quotations again, are in the institutions? Well, you know, logic dictates is because whether we like it or not, those of our side need to take responsibility that the left have more influence on society and institutions because they're more committed to their political agenda than what the centrists and what the right are.
Not just that, it's also the media, which is aligned with the left.
I'm sure, but there are sections
that's a huge deal.
Yeah, but 100% of the media are not aligned with the left.
No, right? But what are you going to say? You're going to say that Sky News, who that appears to be conservative, isn't part of them? Sky News will interview people like Sam Dastyari, but they won't. But then they'll have a hissy fit when someone like Blair Cottrell shows up on the channel, and then they'll fire the dude. So it seems like both the right wing and the left wing media is against.
Well, I'm a nationalist, so I'm neither, because as far as I'm concerned, the right wing and the left wing are of the same burden. It's a vulture that's picking the flesh off your dead carcass.
That's something I'm starting to realize. Even though my morals and my beliefs I'm conservative. That's what I say. But I'm not either right or left. But I do align more with the right. But that doesn't mean that I can't make up my own mind and have opinions.
I want to say this in context.
Go ahead.
Because I'm trying to address the word conservative. Now,
I'm a traditional Christian conservative.
Yeah. For me, wanting to basically preserve the foundations of our legal system, our constitution and that sort of thing, in that context, I want to conserve that. So on that angle, I'm a conservative.
I would agree.
You know what I mean? Right? Mm-hmm. I consider myself a nationalist.
Right? I know what you consider yourself.
Yeah, but I'm a nationalist. But I have to acknowledge that wanting to preserve something is conservative by nature. But the problem with conservatism at general and at large, instead of basically holding the line, right, it's been broken back and then they try and hold that line and then 10, 15 years later it's a retreat, then they hold that line.
But you can't hold the line. That's impossible, because if we were holding the line, we would be criminalizing homosexual behavior, which I don't want to do. I think they should be able to do what they want in their bedroom. We would be...
There'd be an assertion that's false. right? You make an
Okay, so what do you mean when you say hold the line? Because no matter what, society will progress, and then we can only hold on to a certain aspect of conservatism that holds for the current generation or the current era. So what do you mean when you say hold the line? Because the Australia that you would like to see is predominantly white, a lot less people, and obviously predominantly Christian, but that can't exist now. It's too late. There's so much immigration, and it'll continue to grow. So you have to settle yourself with a new version of something that.
No, politically speaking, I will
Sure.
act and I will advocate and I will politically in my struggle advocate for what is now I perceive as a minority group. All other minority groups do it, and I know that in the
You're saying that white people are a minority currently.
Yes.
Do you have a statistic like an Australian bureau? You know what I'm saying? ABS. Okay. Do you have an ABS statistic that you've seen in the last couple of months or something that does say that?
No,
do you recall?
No. But if you're talking about nationalists who have any sort of nationalist political nature, and I'm a white guy, I would pretty sure that I'd be a minority in my thought process. Okay.
Maybe I'm probably a minority in a lot of things that I think.
To the city every day, and I can tell you something now, right? White people are not a majority.
That's through what you visually see in your experiences.
Yes.
Yeah. That's aesthetically.
It's an observation rather than I can't go,
sure.
Let's go to ABS statistics. That's just through personal observation. I will, be on the record saying that. It's an observation.
Someone's just written in the comments, white people are 10% of the global population. This equals minority. I don't know if that's accurate, but I don't know why he'd lie. So
let's
there you go.
address what he said, right?
Okay.
Is in China alone 1.3 billion Chinese.
It's a lot of Chinese.
Right. Now but Chinese,
and a quarter of them are here.
Yeah, and Chinese, for example, don't make up the entire Asian population, do they?
No, because you've got Koreans, South Koreans.
All right, yep. You've got 1.3, 1.4 billion Indians.
They reproduce. They're the second highest reproducers, yeah.
Yeah. The Africans, there's well over 1 billion worldwide Africans. Right?
Okay.
Right.
But then I think about Europe. I think about all of the white countries like Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Finland, Russia, Denmark. I've been to some of these countries. There's a lot of.
They're predominantly white, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're not as population is not as dense.
Well, they also don't have. They only have like 2 kids each. They're not having like 7 kids each.
Well, that's
the way the Middle East does, or other countries do.
I mean, I'm going to be a bit of. This is a bit simplified, but poverty seems to breed children. The more affluent society is,
that might be true.
The less children that they have.
That might be true. My mother's one of 7 full-blooded children, and then 5 half siblings, and they lived in poverty, and they had to sometimes kill stray animals just to stay alive. Long story short, they lived in poverty, and then that's 7 plus 5 children. That's a shitload of kids.
Yeah, well.
So that's a pretty astute theory. I think I can agree with that.
My grandfather was a family of 13. Right?
Well, there you go.
Right, but then his children, there were 4, right, which included my father, right, and then I've only got one brother, so we've gone from 11 siblings to 4 to 2. Right?
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
And then I've got no biological children.
No.
Right, so by
you still have time.
Well,
I should have said that. Sorry, that was a really inappropriate thing to say.
Yeah. Because I can already feel my missus getting the holy water out and saying, "Stay away from me."
No, she loves me too much. she knows my jokes. She knows my jokes.
No, but that's my observation, and it's all to do with affluence too, because.
I don't think you're wrong. What you're saying rings a bell. It sounds like something I think I heard Ben Shapiro say, or something similar to that. Yeah.
And the argument is economically too across the globe, is that if you want to slow down the population rate, right, you know, bring more economic prosperity, right? Because affluence brings people, you know, I don't want to raise kids. I want to go out in my boat in the bay or something. But or they have less. They just simply have less by virtues that they've got to work a lot more. Because you've got to remember, a lot of these poor countries, I mean, you know, they're not even working.
What do you mean?
Right?
Colombia's working? You mean, yeah, maybe
Yeah,
some
a
aren't.
lot of poorer people are not working, and you know, they don't have access to, you know, certain things, so they're bored. So they're probably having a lot more children because they're bored. But
That's probably true. It's a good pastime. It's a good pastime.
unfortunately, even in Africa, the human tragedy in Africa is that, you know, they could be dying and
There's a
starving.
lot of sex trafficking too. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. They
exactly,
could
and
be
they still
dying and
have
they're still.
children. They
Yeah,
still have
you're not
children,
wrong.
right? And China's one child policy is not working either. I mean,
Clearly.
how many children are they killing because, you know, they're trying to appease a government doctrine? So
Forced abortions and stuff. Yeah.
it's just we don't know. So, but that's we're sort of gotten away from the original
Yeah.
subject.
Okay. So let's actually go back to something that did come to my mind a second ago, and that was um, when I went to the slut walk last year.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember you told me you saw the video. And I know you're not a fan of his, but it's irrelevant to what I'm about to bring up. He did say Neil mentioned something regarding an implied political freedom to record. So, what does the actual, if you know it off the top of your head, if you happen to know it, what does the actual Constitution say about recording people? Do they need
It
to
won't be in the
consent?
Constitution. It won't be in the
So,
Constitution.
is it in the Victorian Charter?
Freedom of expression is in the charter, but
So,
like
would that
anything,
include recording someone from a
no, no,
distance?
no,
No.
no. That look, you probably have to look at sort of specific acts. But if I go to section 15, for example, just give me a second,
That's
right?
all right. Take your time. I know
Yeah,
I kind of just jumped at you with that.
yeah. Freedom of expression, right? /1 says every person has the right to hold an opinion without interference. 2,
Okay.
every person has the right to freedom of expression, which includes the freedom to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds, whether within or outside Victoria, and whether A, orally, or B, in writing or in print, C, D, by way of art, or E, in another medium chosen by him or her.
So
Now,
D or E?
that could mean filming. But you've got to remember, law always has a certain amount of ambiguity about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, look, I know Victoria is becoming more of a police state.
Definitely.
I mean, they changed their bail laws recently so that now, in certain crimes,
Mm-hmm.
right, the police don't have to go to a magistrate to get a warrant. They can get a police sergeant to actually execute a warrant for certain things, right? Now, to me, that's scary because the judiciary, which the magistrate is a lower court compared to the high courts, but it's still a separation of powers, right? The
Yeah.
judiciary is supposed to be a representation of the separation of powers from the state.
Yeah.
Now, the police act as the agents or enforcers of
Mm-hmm.
the state's will.
Yes.
You see, subject to law, of course, right? And unfortunately, they're doing this because there's not enough people of my kind, or even not exactly of, you know, like conservative nature or whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
that are counteracting them in our institutions. Remember
Exactly.
the left. Remember the left politically, and that's where I take my hat off to them in a particular context. More committed to their cause, and they're a generation in front.
They are.
They are a
And they're
generation
winning
against
the
in front.
culture wars. So like
That's
that's
right.
why people like you and I now exist. Well, you've
That's
existed
right.
a lot longer than me, but you know what I mean. As in, I didn't mean in years of life. I meant you've existed politically a lot. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't trying to insult you. Yeah.
Yeah. When the seas sort of settled down after the flood, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, and I've seen change in my lifetime, and
It's dramatic, the change, right?
yeah. But what's
Yeah.
happened was it was gradual, but I've seen, you know, from a personal observation view, that things really started going south once Kevin Rudd became Prime Minister in 2007. Things went And that's just a perception, of course.
Sure, sure.
And it just went south, and this politically correct madness has really engulfed our society. And this is where now, and I accept by the verdict that was given to me, right, that, and I'm trying to use the right words, I've got to be more careful, right,
Sure.
and more clever in the way that I use my expression. So what I've got to do, and here's an idea for people, right? And I want to talk about an idea too, Claudia, which I'll be repeating on my program this Saturday night at 7:30, right?
Sure.
Is I want people, and I hope people are listening, right? Please look up Section 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act and its details. Take a copy of that, right? And look up Section 18D, which is your exemptions under the Act, right? And take the details of that and study your exemptions under the Act and learn to communicate within those exemptions to minimise your risk of being taken to court.
That's a fantastic thing you just said, and I reckon that is worth me later cropping that part out of the video and just making that a little, that sounds like something people need to be doing, and that's something I'm going to single out. Because I think it sounds really important.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I accept and you know, I will just playing devil's advocate, because that's what law teaches you to do, to critically think that my perception is that the left get away with more, right?
Oh, they do.
Okay. But let's just play devil's advocate, and let's just say that's just my perception, being a nationalist mindset, right? I'm trying to be speaking like a lawyer, right?
Okay.
Now, I accept, if you know, that, all right, it seems unfair. I'm not going to complain that's unfair, Claudia. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to use the space that's available to me and use the system.
Yes!
Okay. I just wanted to ask something.
Sorry.
That's okay. And use the system that's with me. So using 18D as a guide, which is your exemptions under the Act, right? I know now, because of the political nature of the age that we live in, I'd be an absolute fool if I did another mock beheading.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right? And this is the point I'm trying to make. I got stung by that experience, and it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
now I have to adapt.
I understand.
And use the system and be part of the system, right? And the system also, when you're talking about law and reformative justice, as they call it, right, is that if people took up that mantle, we go, you know what? And I'm not talking about every single person, but if people got more involved, whether it be at a local council level, local state government level, federal government level, if they wanted to get a uni education to become a lecturer, start influencing society where you're allowed to go to these institutions, right? I've had a great time at uni. I say it to now on national YouTube video, international YouTube video. I've had a fantastic time at uni because it's been challenging.
Yeah.
That's the greatest thing about it. And I don't want people to be afraid of that. And if people have not been to uni themselves, right, don't go parroting the fact that, oh, it's influenced by Marxists. Yes, there is that.
Well, right? It's true, but it doesn't mean you can't use the system to your advantage. That's the whole point.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And you've got to be brave enough to go, okay, you know, there's method. And I've grown a lot myself in the last few years, Claudia. I mean, trying to communicate better, learn how the system works, right? You know, if I had my time again, could I say to you now, would I have done things differently? I've got to acknowledge the fact that I probably would have. But I've got to acknowledge that fact.
But then you wouldn't be studying law and be attempting to, like...
I understand that. I understand circumstances prevailed in such a way on where I'm at now, because, you know, I've gone, you know what, I'm going to see the good, what's out of happened, and make a fist of it. That's just as simple as that. Now, coming to my idea, and this is an idea that I mentioned briefly on the Unshackled, right? Because of the separation of powers that our system has, which is the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, right? Okay? Or the legislator. The judiciary is separate from the executive and the legislature, which is the government, right? Upper house and lower house, Prime Minister, House of Representatives, Governor General, and all that sort of thing. Okay. I'm going to put it out there. I want to establish in time, and people can message my box if they will, a solicitor's trust fund, right? A solicitor's trust fund, right? To set up what is a fighting fund, right? And let it grow. Anyone who donates, I've got the idea of they can have a bank statement once a month or once a quarter so they can see the growth of this thing. And people that of the same mindset as I am, studying law, and those who are willing to examine how our system works, we can go over certain parts of state law and legislation, and I would start with the legislation that I was convicted under, and really thoroughly examine whether we can make a High Court challenge, because the High Court has ruled against government, both state and federal. It's also ruled in favour. That cuts both ways, and that the High Court potentially, with a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I mean a lot of effort, but I'm trying to preach to the masses, but this is our duty, this is where we're at. Let's take on the establishment by using the system, which is basically the inheritance of my forefathers. Whether we like it or not, this is the system that we have. So why shouldn't we use it?
Oh, I suppose I agree with that, yeah.
It takes effort. It really does. I mean, do you think I've got another 4 years at uni, right? Okay. These things are very hard to achieve. I'm going through the greatest personal challenge of my life, right? But I'm doing it and motivated by, the desire for public service.
Sure.
And sometimes too, Claudia, that I'm a proud nationalist, so I'll never take that back. But sometimes, we've got to examine ourselves and ask ourselves, could we do things better? Can we do things differently?
Oh, of course. Right? But the answer to both of those is yes.
Okay. And generally speaking, and I'm speaking in the context of the left too, right? Playing devil's advocate, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Mate, they have as much to lose as what we do, because the state, or those who use our system corruptly, our governments, don't care about the left nor right. They only care about the power that they have. Do you understand?
Well, that's because they don't want to lose the stronghold that they do currently attain.
The left are being used like anyone else. Okay?
Oh, I know, but they don't see that. There's a puppeteer, for sure.
Yeah, right. They've got as much to lose. Because I'll put it to you this way, right? I know that they get away with it at presence, like homosexuals have used, and it does, I don't like it. Homosexuals have actually used a mock crucifixion and done it down a float on the gay Mardi Gras.
I have no issues with gay people individually, but the things they do at large as a community, where they try to infiltrate the legal system and their blasphemy, blasphemy bothers me. I agree with you.
But if the same and not politically motivated test was applied to them as it was to, say, myself, Blair and Neil at the Bendigo 3, well, they should be before the court. And remember, there doesn't have to be a victim according to Victorian law, but they should be the court, and the DPP should basically lay charges for religious discrimination against Christians.
Yeah, but that'll never happen. We are persecuted.
I understand, but I'm not going to cry victim. But I'm just
no. Sorry. I was just reacting. Keep going.
If we're to be totally objective, I mean, that should be repulsed as much, if not more, than what we alleged, that what we did and what we were convicted under.
Sure.
Back in 2017. And there's this inconsistency, and it is politically motivated, because we can't escape the fact that, unfortunately, in the legal process and through the police command, right, and this is hence our feelings about a police state, there's too much political interference. Right? The separation of powers is no clear defined.
No, a government needs to be small. Like, it has, like, a restricted government is a thing that I believe in strongly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there were events that were done by the Conservatives. For example, the Firearms Act opened the door, right? You know, like Port Arthur.
Sure.
The Firearms Act created after Port Arthur created the opportunities for the states, whether they're Labor or Liberal, to give the police commissioner of each state jurisdiction or territory jurisdiction discretionary powers. And those discretionary powers were, I don't think you're a fit and proper person. And instead of having an objective test, it's becoming more and more subjective, right? So the right to be presumed innocent is thrown out the window.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, when I lost my firearms license, it wasn't objective, right? So much so I won it back and then lost it again.
Right? Yeah. No, well, yeah.
Right, a VCAT, right? Because it's no longer objective. And to me, a political act, which I would like to do in the future, is that these discretionary powers that the police commissioners have should be removed. Secondly, the police commissioners should not be political appointments, but rather voted in by the members of each jurisdiction. So the South Australian Police should have a criteria, or Victorian Police, or whatever police jurisdiction should have a criteria amongst their most senior ranks who have worked hard, build up the ranks, and the members should vote in their own police commissioners instead of having a police commissioner there that's virtually appointed by government. I don't like that. There's too much political interference.
There is.
And unfortunately, what we're seeing with the police over the last, decade or more, right, particularly in the last few years, is that their decisions for controlling the populace is being politically motivated rather than legally motivated. There's that blur there because, these so-called human rights that we have, right? For example, the reason why they use the Responsibilities Act, because while I read out the first part of you, the second part says under 3, special duties and responsibilities are attached to the right of freedom of expression, and the right may be subject to lawful restrictions reasonably necessary. Right? So on the one breath, they give you that freedom, but on the other breath, if we decide that you've gone too far,
you just take it away.
They'll just try and know you, right? So
it's a revolving door that goes a little bit forwards and then it just goes back again.
Yes, I mean, look, it says here, 16, peaceful assembly and freedom of association. Well, peaceful assembly, every person has a right to peaceful assembly. But what they're doing in that now is that
every person has a right for, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, for freedom of assembly or peaceful assembly, except when you're holding a camera and then you are confronted by Antifa and, oh my God,
Yes, and every person has the right to freedom of association with others, including the right to form and join trade unions. But what they're not telling you now is that, you do in Victoria, but if the police says we're going to search you, right, and search your bags, they can do it.
Okay. Right? But they're allowed, aren't they?
Well, it's only been recent. It hasn't always been the case. And what's happened is that, from what I've learned from the
Marxist school,
is that there's actually a contradiction in that, right? Because the police are subjected to strict criteria when it comes to search.
Oh, right? Okay, yeah.
But unfortunately, the way it works too is that law always has an ambiguous part of it. So when the police, when you quote them, say you have no right unless you've got a good reason, they go to the ambiguous part and say, well, this is the reason why we're going to search you.
Yeah, of course they do. Yeah, the cheeky. Right? Of course that's what they're going to do.
And it's like, and this is the fight that we've got to have. And the only way we can exercise change, and it's a generational thing, if we really want to make a difference, we're going to have to start getting better educated and start preparing and say, are you willing to have a lifelong commitment to the service to your nation through public office of some sort, whether that be legal representation as a solicitor, a political advocate, or wanting to do, like, even as a counsellor at a local council, right? You know, you can have influence in a local way if you decide, well, I'm going to become a councillor. If your heart and your desire is for genuine public service, state governance, federal governance, right? There's these avenues which are available to us, but it takes effort.
Yeah.
And that includes my idea of setting up a fund.
Yeah, well, they did that for the wall, for Trump's wall. Everyone's put in money, so I'm sure someone will be keen. Yeah, I'm sure that's that's an idea that can be taken off the ground if enough people see the benefit and the practicality of it.
Yeah, and we've got to use the tools which are there, but we have to understand that those tools are not. It's not easy to do because we can't just go to the High Court. This law is wrong. I mean, they're just going to say nick off, right? You have to have a profound legal writ, right? And to present that to the High Court, and it has to be basically watertight. You have to refer to case law. You have to refer to precedent. You have to refer to the right acts. It's a very gigantic challenge, but we've got to do it. That's just the point. So my message is to people, we have to think about what we do, and we have to push forward and get involved at many levels.
I would agree.
Social media.
We should use it to our advantage or whatever it is.
And Facebook.
Instagram, Minds, all of it, Twitter, all of it.
But it's only there to impart information. Right?
Or to spread gossip, but yeah.
For most part, social media is an electronic sewer, for the most part. It has its good element to it, which is it can be used to impart information. But it can be a dog's breakfast too, and it can actually get you censored unnecessarily.
But one of my subscribers told me to tell you to look at your phone. His name is Wolfie Winks.
Yeah. I know him. Yeah.
Yeah, so do I.
I've spoken to him.
Yeah, he's a questionable character. He's watching, so I know I can say that. he's a pisser. Anyway, sorry. I wonder if he said anything to my phone. No, I'm kidding. Keep going.
But we have to do things different, because if we don't, we're not going to reverse anything.
No, exactly. Or we're not going to at least preserve what we have now and stop it from getting worse.
Well, I mean, we should think a bit more bolder than that, because that's the reason why we have parliaments. Because parliamentarians are a representative of the people that voted, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about all forms of lobbying, right? Okay. If we don't want to engage in physical struggle, in other words, physical warfare, right? We've got to engage in political struggle. Right?
A lot. Cultural warfare, ideological warfare, political struggles, maintaining our Christian heritage. There's a shitload to deal with and to try. And that's why I'm doing what I do in a small way. Obviously, this isn't what I do in my day-to-day life. I've already been doxxed. Everyone knows I'm a dental assistant. But, I'm doing my small part, and it's not a whole lot. And you're doing something far greater than what I am, far more noble than what I am by going to school.
But I'm a lot older too, and I'm in a that sort of right place, Claudia. But I mean, I'm going to give you an example. This is another version of devil's advocate, right? Now, I would not like someone like, say, Peter Grace to be banned because of his type of freedom of expression.
Oh, I wouldn't either. Right. I think he would rejoice in me getting banned. He seems to hate me, but I agree with you. I think he should be able to say what he says, no matter how inaccurate.
But understand that he's not always inaccurate, right? And
about me he is, but about you, he has. Yeah, you're right. He's not always inaccurate.
He's not always inaccurate, and
no, I didn't say he was always inaccurate. I just said no matter how inaccurate.
I'm trying to make a point though, Claudia, and the Claudia is the right is just.
I'll let you talk.
Right, the right are just as guilty of trying to shut down left-wing pages too. You
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I mean, both sides are willing and happy to ban one another. Right, because I'll put it to you another way, right? All right, some of his videos are funny. It's actually, quite funny. And if you can't handle someone taking a bit of a mickey on you, right?
Oh, for sure.
And a bit of a critique off you. It's like, have a cup of concrete. Honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, should we really care because someone has critiqued me? All right? I mean, why? And if anything, why not use it to your advantage? Let's say, well, let's have a look at what he says. How can I do things better? All right? Because in the culture war, my perception, being devil's advocate again, my perception is that someone of my politics is treated more unfairly than someone of progressive politics. But I'm not going to bitch about it being unfair. I'm just going to accept that it is unfair and concentrate on, all right, well, it makes me to try harder to be better, right?
Be the bigger person.
And to take it on, yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I've actually never mentioned Peter Grace once. This is the first time someone's mentioned him to me publicly. Yeah. But I don't. This is me being religious, but I don't hate anyone. I don't hate him. But what you're saying about not complaining, it's not complaining necessarily, but it's more stating a fact. It is true, and even some leftists that I know would say, yeah, conservatives are judged a little bit more harshly. Like I would hope that someone can acknowledge that who isn't conservative. I would hope that there's people like that exist on the far left.
I know of one of a far left girl
that would admit that.
Right, I know
that would acknowledge that. Yeah,
I spoke to when I was going through the second mention hearing at
the
Bendigo trial, and she actually confessed to me you shouldn't be here.
She said what? Sorry, can you say that again?
You shouldn't be here in court.
Oh, that's good. See, that's reasonable.
Even though we're politically opposite.
At ends. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Okay, and I appreciated that.
Yeah.
Right, because it's like, because if she wants to say a political view, which I find abhorrent,
sure,
right, but not unlawful.
I
mean, I don't want her to, be shut down. I don't want her to be banned or anything like that.
Sure.
Because why should we all be afraid of the court of public opinion?
Oh, exactly. Something that does come to mind. The only leftist that I can think of that was treated quite bad in terms of tribalism.
Yeah.
It's American, and I actually think she deserved it. But it was Kathy Griffin when she held the head of Trump's severed head.
No. I was on Mark Latham's show talking about it.
Oh, okay. Well, I actually felt like that reaction was well deserved. She deserved what she got for that because Trump's 12-year-old son Barron thought something bad had happened to his father. Now, did she deserve to be banned and all that? No. Like, she should have been free to sort of do what she wants. But the backlash she got is also a result of freedom of speech, and that's what people don't realize. It's if you're going to give it, you're going to have to take it.
Well, that's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And that's
I mean, to be honest with you, right, the fact is like the Bendigo 3, right?
Yes, you guys, yeah.
I wish there was a Muslim that made a complaint.
There wasn't, though.
But that's the point. So my issue steered away from Islam and my protesting against Islamic influence. It moved away from that to the overreaching authority of the state.
Mm-hmm.
That's where because then I've gone through that experience. I've gone, to me, the effects of Islam in Australia, just like, elements of multiculturalism to me as a nationalist, are symptoms of what the state has done.
Yes, it's the state's fault. Like, that's where we can't blame Muslims. We can't blame the immigrants. Like, we have to begin with the source. That's the government, the leftist government, the Marxist government.
Well, I mean,
and we are
the state of Victoria. Yeah, I mean,
but we are yielding. We are allowing it. That's the thing. Yeah. You allow one microaggression. Like, I hate speaking in that language, but like that's the words that they use now. All those feminist words. You allow one microaggression and then another microaggression and then and then eventually, like I'm noticing now. I don't know if you put this in the same umbrella, but I'm noticing now that Easter eggs are no longer called Easter eggs. They're chocolate eggs. And, like instead of saying Merry Christmas, which we still can say and many people do in Australia, but a lot of the times instead of saying that we're going to the Christmas party, the phrase is now we're going to the holiday, we're having the holiday party. Like,
what about Qantas?
What about Qantas?
Qantas is trying to put out a policy. Don't say mother and father, and
see,
the gender neutral bullshit.
So stupid.
Well, I'll tell the CEO of Qantas. That's why I don't fly with them. Right? So I make a decision with my wallet. Right? I went overseas to England last year, and I flew with Singapore Airlines. Okay.
So you didn't even fly with your own people. What was that?
I don't fly with Qantas. If they're going to have that sort of political garbage, you're not spending my money on it. So I flew to England with Singapore Airlines, and Singapore Airlines provided a lovely service.
Of course they did. Yeah.
And they're not caught up in this politically correct, bullshit. So, Mr. Joyce or whatever his name is, CEO of Qantas, wake up to yourself, right? It's just like, having this gender neutral garbage, mate.
Yeah, I agree. It is garbage.
Mate, I'm a man, all right? You're a woman. Oh, but I don't identify yourself with that. Then, well, I couldn't care less.
Yeah, right? It's like saying, you can't say purple is purple, it's green.
Yeah, exactly.
No, purple is purple, idiot.
Exactly. And that sort of, that it's really gone feral. It seems the last a couple of years, this gender neutral and multi-genders, and it's just nuts.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
It's very confusing, and and they're so precious about it that the state of affairs is actually rancid. That even politically, like, here's a good example how sensitive and how rancid it's got.
Mm-hmm.
The morning show with Kerry Ann Kennelly, right?
Yeah. Oh, are you talking about
the Aboriginal issue about, right? And was it what's her name? Yumi Stynes or whatever her name is?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, you're a racist.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Well, that must have taken all of about.
I'm offended by that.
An IQ of 8 to actually blurt out that word. You're a racist. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, and that's what it's come to, right? And it's like, when I look at her, half Japanese, I think she's got Japanese heritage in her. Racist. Yeah, okay. I don't think it's not very sort of helpful to what is a genuine problem.
No, she's like, connect the dots. Like, what dots? That you're drawing a line where you're making stretches that no one else would have made.
And you know what? In World War II, for the record, Japanese were butchers.
I know that.
Right? Actually, there were butchers that bad that my great uncle, who I got his service records, was killed on the Kakuta Trail because he was part of the first commando unit ever formed, and he was subject to cannibalism. Cannibalized.
That's crazy.
By the Japanese. So, please spare me. Like that. But that's an ugly part of history. Like that doesn't mean I wouldn't go to Japan. I'd like to go to Japan and see what the country's like.
Oh, sure.
So, it's not a condemnation of every single Japanese man or woman. So I use the gender pronoun, see?
I know.
But that's just the point. So, all right, look, when it comes to our system, people have just got to please start learning it, right? When I'm talking about a legal fund here, to set up a legal fund to test state law versus the federal law, right? There's a section in the Constitution called when the law of the state is inconsistent with the Commonwealth, the latter shall prevail. And to the extent of that inconsistency, the former will be invalid, right?
So, but I feel like that's probably happening quite often.
I believe there's state legislation or acts which are out of step with federal legislation, because the rule is if the Commonwealth have established a law, the states have only got the authority to make statutes equivalent or consistent with the federal act. They do not have the constitutional authority to exceed the mandate of federal law.
Okay.
That's the interpretation of Section 109 of the Constitution, right? Okay. Right. So and this is where I believe there's some acts, and even what I was done under is actually inconsistent with Commonwealth law. But the problem is that the High Court is not an investigative body. Right?
The High Court is not an... Well, who does that stuff?
This is what I'm saying. If you
Yeah,
want
that's
to
why
take
I'm asking
something
you.
to the High Court, you have to bring it to the High Court's attention. The High Court's not going to, search all the acts of every state government and every jurisdiction to check to see, for example, that the state legislation is consistent with the Constitution. Because if someone wants to make that claim, they have to put in an application to the High Court. Do you understand? And that's when if they choose to accept the argument, to examine it and rule on a matter of law. That's how the High Court works. So it's tough. It's a tough ask, but I believe it's possible if enough people were prepared to put their mind to it and raise funds so that it can be legally challenged. Because you're going to have to talk about barristers and all sorts of things. That's why I'm getting into law too. If I go down that track, that's certainly things there that I'd like to examine. But people have to get on board, you see. So, and I'll be repeating this message Saturday night after I have a bit of a talk, because I'll be raising some issues, what we can do about, as a society. I'm going to repeat this message until it wears people out. And I'll be mentioning, Milo Yiannopoulos, how he's banned and then he was led into the country.
Milo Yiannopoulos, yeah.
Milo. It's not like I think of anything from him, but this is how
precious. I used to adore that guy. I don't say much anymore.
But it's still precious, you know what I mean?
Oh, of course.
And the state government here, I mean, they have no legal mandate to say to Milo, you owe us 50 grand. Bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Right. They don't have a legal mandate. That's a load of hogwash. Police are there to protect, right? And Milo, when he came last time, whatever you think of him, he obviously legally...
I got a photo with him.
Yeah, he legally organised a place.
Yeah.
To set up a seminar, right? That was all done legal. And for the state to turn around and say you owe us 50 grand because of a police presence is paramount to the mob demanding protection money.
Oh, absolutely. The police are babies. Like, I mean, I shouldn't say that at large. I'm sure many of them love serving the people, but they are babies.
This is the police command, right, at the whim of the government, because it's politically impalatable for them, right? They don't like some of the things that Milo says, so no, we're going to demand these things from you. Well,
because he doesn't fit their pigeonhole. He's gay, but he defends Christian, and people can't make sense of that, so they have to,
shut it off at the source. Milo. To me, it's about an example of a state government out of control, which is taking their authority too far. That's what it's about. It's not about Milo or his opinion, but it's about that process. How dare they, right, charge? And like they try to do the same thing with Lauren Southern, right? Okay.
Yeah, I worked that event. Yeah.
Hey, politically speaking, why would you pay people fucking money to come over to talk generalised bullshit regarding the West, where they really don't know the ins and outs and specifics on how our legal system and how our constitutional system works? Right?
Well, she was speaking about the West at large.
Yeah, okay, but
yeah,
if you want to spend money, put it into a legal fund, which I'm suggesting, right? And join a political party that suits you and get involved in our own politics and our own specific system. Because whether you like it or not, they're the ones jet setting all around the world. It's a great way to travel the world. I'm just going to conduct seminars. What's the difference between them and, say, someone like Al Gore? Let's just spin shit about the climate, and now he's a very rich man because of it. Right? Okay? People in Australia, forget about Milos, forget about the Lauren Southerns of the world. Right? If you want to make change in your jurisdiction, which is the Commonwealth of Australia, then start thinking about how you can have an impact here and at least support those who are trying to have an impact here in this country.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to get back to a different topic momentarily, but
Yeah.
we should probably finish up soon. Actually, we've gone over an hour. Um, you say often your ilk, meaning your people, meaning the native white Australian. So
Yep.
people like myself, I don't mean to like personalize this in any way, and I know you've
Yep.
already answered this to me privately, but I thought it would be good for people to hear you out. Because a lot of people just assume that all nationalists are like, you know, horrible racist or whatever. So, in terms of do you consider people who have been here for 3 generations, 2 generations, or 1 generation to be Australian? So, not my parents. I know you wouldn't consider them Australian in terms of their heritage, but would you consider me Australian, not in terms of heritage, but in terms of practice? And you know what I'm asking. So, how would you respond to that?
The only answer I can give you, because it's a complex answer,
Of
but
course.
straight out of a historian's mouth, right?
Sure.
My forefathers envisioned a white Australia.
Of course, that
Right?
I get, and I'm not offended
Right.
by that
Yeah,
statement.
yeah,
I know
yeah.
many on the left are offended by that
So
statement.
by politically thinking, I can't, whether those people or not that are here, right, I can't deny what their feelings are. Do they feel Australian? Do they enjoy the benefits of being Australian? Are they legally Australian? Yes. Right? Politically speaking, no. My forefathers envisioned a white Australia. Right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't have changed. The greatest
Okay.
mistake that we ever made was ending the white Australia policy. I've been on record. I've been on the 7:30 report.
Mm.
Right? I said that. I've said it on national TV.
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Do you want me to fly back to Colombia?
But I'm banned from Colombia. My missus won't allow me to go.
I
Right?
know. I heard her.
Right? But I can't, in good faith, right, deny the feelings of people. And, you know, people mistake me from being a nationalist to say you must hate everyone that's not coloured.
No.
Right?
And I know that to be not true, but that's the stretch. That's what the left equates. That's how they conclude it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's rubbish.
Yeah. Of course. Of
But
course.
but there was a beautiful experience that I had. I was working for a company doing some casual work, right? And a couple of Kenyans were working with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually agree this on a policy matter if I was, in government.
Mm-hmm.
And these Kenyans were here to get educated.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's always room for a limited amount to help others from other countries, to help them. Limited, of course, not at the expense of your own people, but to help them. And they were here getting a university education, but they weren't here to stay.
Mm.
They didn't want to stay.
Mm.
Right? And one was doing a mathematical engineer, and other in construction. And their whole purpose was to better themselves so that they can go back.
Improve their own countries.
Improve their own country and make their
That's admirable.
Yeah, pardon the cliche, to make their country great.
Yeah, that's
right?
admirable.
Right. And the thing is, a true nationalist, to me, is not a racist, because he can appreciate the complexity of human diversity by recognising the differences between different peoples.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
Right? I wouldn't want the country of Japan, for example. I wouldn't want that population to be diluted with whites, Indians, and all that sort of thing.
I made a video about this, about race preservation and why I'm for race preservation, but at the same time, I'm not against race mixing. I made this, I said that I want to go to Italy and see Italians.
People are going to do that regardless.
Exactly, but I still think race preservation is important. I don't want to go to Italy and see black people and Chinese people when I'm there to see Italians.
And to be honest with you, from an Indigenous point of view, I don't want to see Aboriginal culture wiped out, because there's been,
It's pretty diluted, though.
In a lot of respects, it has. And there was actually, certain government policy at certain times in Australian history that they tried to dilute the population.
They did, because it's a regressive gene, and by the 3rd generation, it's stamped out.
And that's shameful behaviour.
Absolutely.
Right, from a nationalist point of view, to breed Aboriginal people out of existence, and that was policy at certain times in our history, right?
That's ridiculous. It's paramount
wrong. To a form of genocide.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you.
And for Aboriginal culture to be preserved, it must have a racial connotation to it. It must preserve the integral racial gene for that culture to survive. And, you know, I don't think that's racist the way I'm talking.
No, I don't think it is either. But many would say that's racist because people are stupid. And I know you said, I'm not going to be mean, but like people are stupid. Even I've had my moments where I am, I'm sure. Yeah, that's a stupid, I can't even speak. That's a stupid stretch to make. It makes no sense.
Yeah, look, the bottom line is that I'm trying to do things different, talking about controversial issues and trying to speak in a manner where, you know, and I say to the opposition, don't get triggered. People from left to right to everywhere get triggered too easy. And social media is obviously partly responsible for that because it's relatively new, the technology. I certainly didn't grow up with social media, didn't grow up with even a mobile phone, let alone Xbox or all that sort of thing.
Same until I was like 18.
Yeah. So it's relatively new. And, you know, for me, we should be able to engage in conversations which people find controversial without this triggered. And to me, you know, and your comments on your page earlier, you know, Beatrice's going to get angry, right? And I said, be nice, right?
I'm being nice, I know.
But hey, it's not a good feeling. And you know what? Only people who truly know me, what I went through the last 3 years, because it was factors outside the Bendigo 3, what I was going through.
I know,
contributed to you know, my tenseness, if you like.
Yeah, you've been through a rough trot.
Yeah, it was, and you know, I think one of the greatest ways that we can counteract this triggered mentality, because the left are big on triggered. Not all left. There are some reasonable left people out there. Right?
Absolutely agree.
Right. Is to remain civilized and to remain, you know, hey, let's try not to get hot under the collar too easy. I know that I've had my moments, and sure, I acknowledge that. And
really, you?
Yeah, it's hard to believe, isn't it? You know, this quiet, gentle soul.
Yes.
And engage politically, but have that civility about it as well. I think we need that because I think that's been lost.
Sure.
And I've actually enjoyed more civility at university than I've had in political advocacy anywhere
That's
else.
good. That's promising, isn't it?
It is because, you know, there is a bit of, you know, tide. There are some within the very young ilk that are bucking against what is a leftist progressive mindset. There is a percentage there, so which is good, and you know, we need to retain civility. Right?
Yes, we do, but it's deteriorating. Hey, stop it! Yeah,
and I can tell you something now, right? With the exception of, you know, because there are reasonable left-wing or left-minded people out there, that is the best tool against progressive politics, to remain civil, right? Because, mate, the world's going mad.
Oh, it is. It's crazy.
And the only way we can resist it is to remain lawful, you know? And that's why, personally, I took stock after my trial, right, and thought to myself, can't do this, can't take on the state this way, right? We've got to basically, you know, adapt, mould, get politically engaged, learn, and do things differently, you know, and take on the state in a more intellectual way, a more civilised way, and use the system. I can't say it enough. Use the system that's there, right? It's what we have. It's what we have. Right? I'm driven by duty, and I know there are opportunities that are going to come my way. I don't know, to be honest with you, exactly what path or what door is going to open at the end of it, but I know that it's going to lead to some sort of service of public life.
Sure. But okay, so just to sort of go down the same path but slightly divert.
Yeah.
When someone like me, who isn't a white Australian, I'm a first generation Australian, but
Yeah.
I'm fighting for all the same things that mainly you talk about.
Yeah.
Does that sort of unsettle you? Do you kind of think, what's she doing? Do you kind of think, why is this person of color trying to jump on this conservative bandwagon, kind of doing what I'm doing? Like, how does that work in your sort of Australian nationalist mentality, if that makes sense?
Pragmatism.
Okay.
Meaning that I'm not going to be able to.
You won't offend me. Like, you've said a lot of things today that would offend others, but I'm okay. I'm okay with you saying that, like, my mum and dad are not Australian. That doesn't offend me, because I know
it's
that
pragmatism.
they didn't colonize. Like, I get what you're saying. It's fine. But when
Yeah.
I'm fighting for Australia the way that I do it, what do you think? So when you say pragmatism, what do you mean?
Well, I'm not focused on you, to be quite frank. I'm
No, but
focused
I'm
on what I
asking
want to
you
do.
for your direct opinion about what I'm doing for Australia according to your Australian nationalism. How do you view it?
Well,
Would you rather not answer that
in
question?
very technical sense, Claudia, you're not a white Australian, are you?
No.
Right, you're not.
No, I'm proud of my
No,
Latin heritage.
I don't think you're a bad person, and I think
I know
you're
that.
trying to, find your way, and you're trying to act according to your conviction, right?
That's all true.
And all power to you when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't emphasize enough, right, that I've got to fight for my own ilk as much as I find the contradictions in it, right?
Sure.
But people would say that I'm a contradictory fella.
Well, Milo Yiannopoulos is deemed the same way, and it's the contradictions that people see on the outset that actually make people like us unique characters, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because they can't pigeonhole us. Like, I don't make sense. I know that I'm fighting for a white Australia to a degree. I'm not fighting for it the same way you are, because I do think Australia should be predominantly white. I believe that.
Yeah.
But I think it should be okay to have small enclaves of people who've immigrated and adopted the culture the way my parents have, because they left they've each left respective Christian Western societies and just traded that in for a different Western society.
All I can do is fight for my ilk in the context of minority status. Okay. Because, white Australia ended officially in 1972.
Sure.
Right. I started seeing the changes in the early 80s because it was first the Vietnamese that came from Vietnam because of the Vietnam War, late 70s, early 80s, right? And even when I was going through high school, there was, like gang wars between the Aussies and the Vietnamese, right? Because, the perception was that they brought a knife culture. And I was privy to many instances when I was a teenager for basically gangs. We talk about the African gang problem,
Because the Vietnamese are not a problem now. It seems with each racial group, there's a new problem after every 10 years or something. It's very odd.
They were when they came out. But, Australia to me now is not even a culture anymore.
That I can agree with. The multiculturalism has deteriorated it. I can agree with that. Even patriotism in your own country, even tattooing like the Australian flag, there's so many elements we've lost a lot of what the Australian culture used to be, and I can see that in my 30 years here.
Yeah, and you know what? It comes down to this when it comes to advocating for rights and what is under law, right? I've got to be objective.
Oh, of course.
The greatest skill that I'm learning is impartiality, right? And I have my political beliefs, right? I stand by my political beliefs.
Sure.
But it's also wrapped in a healthy dose of pragmatism, and I accept where we are in 2019. And look, one of my law teachers, he's black and he's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's no debating that individuals from every race are great.
Yeah, I might politically, he's not an Australian, right?
No, but you appreciate him as a human.
I'm not even sure whether he's actually a permanent resident or he's just got like a couple of year contract or something. It's unknown, right? But he's a good teacher. We have a good class. So, but I'm allowed to practice my politics as long as I have civility to it. As long as I articulate my point of view. And that paradox is, I've said it many times tonight, is my own ilk. Right? Most people hated Jesus, so he came down to save the house of Israel, right? So he was rejected by his own. So by the great majority of them. So it's sort of a similar thing. But I ain't no Messiah, of course. I'm just a normal man. You know, I'm a man of Anglo-Saxon heritage.
With no sense of rhythm. No kidding.
From the Latino.
Hey, my hips don't lie.
The hips don't lie. Yeah. I'm going to actually invoke the legal term that I have the right to silence now because, you know, whatever I might say now might incriminate me.
Is your wife watching?
That's exactly. She's probably sharpening the knife right now.
You have a lot of knives.
I do. I have a lot of knives, yeah. That's
not a knife.
That's her fault.
Yeah, I'd imagine. All right. Well, I think we're good. Is there anything you want to say before we head off? We've gone for an hour and a half. That's pretty good. That's longer than what I wanted to do.
Okay. You can edit it if you want.
No, it'll just go up. We haven't said anything. I only edit it if I have to. When I did a live stream with Stephen Joyce, he said so many jokes, racist jokes that they were funny, but like I had to cut that bit out and then re-upload it. We were good. We were pretty PG, I think, so it's okay.
Yeah. Look, political message is that you got to understand the landscape that you're in. Right?
Yeah.
Right. You do. We don't live in an environment where people take the piss anymore, because if you take the piss, people can get offended and you could ultimately end up in a tribunal court or something like that.
We've lost the art of larrikinism. Yeah. I'm actually doing a speech in Sydney. Yeah. Oh, actually, you know about that. Yeah. I told you. Actually, I think you were the first person I told. But that is in a few weeks. I'm not telling anyone the dates because I don't want anyone to infiltrate the event in any way. But in it, I mentioned that we've lost our sense of humor due to political correctness. Like that's part of the points that I've mentioned. So
yeah, but look,
you're very right.
Yeah, people call me a redneck, and my response is, especially when I forget the sunscreen. So, you know what? I get called beetroot.
You do in a literal physical sense have a red neck.
Yeah, in summer, yeah.
I don't think these people are incorrect.
Yeah, okay, and I use racist sunscreen too because it's white. So, yeah, man. What can I say? I am that I am, and
I am that I am. Yes.
I am that I am. So I'm going to be what I'm going to be. And people either love me or loathe me or whatever in between.
I think we get a lot of both. We get a lot of people that love us and hate us. And then a vast majority just don't give a shit about us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the vast majority are too, hypnotised or whatever like that. But hey, 7:30, Saturday night, the Bowman.
Right, I will link all of that. I haven't linked your channel. I will after this in the description box below.
Yeah, but it's not a Facebook feed.
Okay, I'll link your Facebook page. Does the
Facebook Live?
Do you have a Facebook page called the Bowman, or do you have a page, or do you just have your account?
No, that's just my title. It's just on my Christopher Shortis Nationalist page, my public figure page.
Okay, so send that to me after, and I'll link it to that. You can get some. Hey, stop it.
Yeah, I'll be talking about what we can do, and I'll be reinforcing the idea that we can develop a fund, a legal trust fund of some sort. That's what I'm investigating, and I think that my message is Australians need to go. If you're fair income, those are on the centre to the right. you need to engage in your political duty, your active duty to Australian political struggle by using the system, not the street bullshit, because you're playing into the hands of the state. But start using your head.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for tuning in to my 7:30 Wednesday night live stream. Next Wednesday, I'll have Adam Osinski. He is a Sydney podcaster. He's also a radio VJ. He's interviewed many people from the United States of the Nation of Islam. And something a little bit different for me, so I'll have him on my channel, and at some point I will be on his podcast. So tune in for that. And is there anything you want to say before I go?
Thank you for those who listened. Thank you
very
much. Good night, Claudia.
All right. Night, everyone. And Kenji, I want you on my channel. Bye, guys.